for him?
Right now, before we get into that conversation, we want to talk. We have our good friend of the show, Congressman Jody Hice. Congressman, how are you, my brother?
I'm doing great. Good to be with y'all.
Thank you, Congressman. First question: why is D.C. Statehood a bad idea?
Well, there are multiple reasons. I believe it's thoroughly unconstitutional.
Hold on.
You're underwater, Representative Hice. You got that Metro PCS?
Yeah, Getro PCS. Yeah. Well, Representative, can you do you have talk now?
Okay. It's unconstitutional for one thing.
We got a bad connection. Scotty B, let's put him on hold and see if we can work this out. Hold on, Congressman. Hold on. Go ahead, Scotty B.
Yeah, so we'll come back to him. A lot of people are switching to Getro PCS. They are. It's a lot cheaper. It's a lot cheaper, Scotty B. Tell us when you want us to go back. But that is a good question because I have read various editorials, people not necessarily in D.C., on why it would be a very bad thing for D.C. to have statehood. But I want to hear from somebody who is in the mix. So I think that question is good. And we're going to go back to Representative Hice. So Representative Hice, why is it a bad thing for D.C. to have statehood?
Yeah, great topic. It's unconstitutional for one thing. Our founders did not want the capital of our nation to be in a state. They didn't want any state to have undue influence on the direction that our country goes, and so they specifically set aside a district that in itself is controlled by representatives from all 50 states. And that district is the district represented by all 50 states, but it is not in itself a state which has influence over the seat of our government. And so our founders put it that way. And it's going to require a constitutional amendment to change it. But beyond that, this is all a political ploy from the Democrats to get 2 more senators. That's really the only reason that they are pursuing this. It's a close race, as we all know, in the Senate, virtually a tie with Kamala Harris, Vice President, breaking the tie, and the Democrats want more control. So they want D.C. to become a state, and thereby they would be entitled to 2 more senators. And D.C. itself is 90% a Democratic city. So it would be forever 2 Democratic senators from that so-called state if D.C. actually became a state.
What do you say to the argument that I heard that no taxation without representation, which is essentially what our country was founded on, because we were being taxed by our country and we had no freedoms. So what do you say to that argument?
Well, there are multiple things. Again, they do have representation. They elect their own local leaders. They elect the leaders who will lead their city. And beyond that, they do have a federal delegate, and they have 3 electoral votes in the presidential election. No other city in the country has that kind of representation. What they do not have is a specific congressman or woman and 2 senators. But they have all the other representation, and like I said, even then, they do have a delegate in D.C., and they have 3 electoral votes in presidential elections, and they get to vote in presidential elections. So that's a myth that is thrown out there to try to persuade people that somehow D.C. needs to become a state. Listen, there is no – if you go that direction and make D.C. a state, number one, you have a constitutional issue because we have our founders giving us a district, not a state, where the seat of our government is placed. But even if you get over that hurdle, where does it stop? Why doesn't Atlanta become its own state? Why doesn't any city become its own state? Where does it stop if we are going to allow cities to start becoming a state? There's no reasonable explanation why it would stop with D.C. Just keep the ball rolling.
We're talking to Representative Jody Hice about Washington, D.C.'s statehood. Now, Representative, people are talking about it on both sides. It's got another step to go. What, in your head, what is the chance that this actually could happen?
I don't think there's any chance. I think the Democrats will try everything they can, and I say that 2 ways. Of course, it has passed the House. We knew it would pass the House. Now it awaits action in the Senate. We will see what happens if Chuck Schumer decides to exercise the nuclear option and just have this an up or down simple majority vote rather than what the Senate always does with having the 60 votes. Then it would pass the Senate. Of course, President Biden would sign it into law. Then it becomes a legal challenge. But the Democrats want to fix that issue by packing the courts and adding 4 more justices to the Supreme Court. So they are attempting everything they can to try to bypass the Constitution, bypass the will of the people, bypass the intent of our founders, and to pack the court so that they can get what they want, which is absolute control. So I don't see all that happening. I don't see it going that way. If they attempt to do so, there will be multiple lawsuits, and I think at the end of the day they would certainly lose.
Last question before we let you go, and we appreciate you coming on with us. Representative Jody Hice is on with us talking about D.C. statehood. Representative, last question. I'm hearing a lot of Democrats now throw out the R word, and I mean by racist, that it's racist to be against D.C. statehood. Do you think when that happens, we know as conservatives that they have lost the policy argument?
Well, absolutely. I mean, race has nothing to do with our constitutional dictates. It's simple. Our founders did not want a state having undue influence over our federal government. And so they instead created a district where our capital is, and that district is itself represented by representatives from all of the states of our country, obviously now that being 50. And so that's constitutional. There's nothing racist about that. That's the way it's set up. If you want to change it, you can change it. It requires a constitutional amendment, though. You can't just randomly ignore the Constitution and say we're going to make this city a state. You just can't do it that way. And yeah, I think when you start having the racial argument out there, it is indicative that yet again the Democrats' policy is weak, and so they try to force their way by accusing others of something that doesn't exist in this case.
So, Representative Hice, we thank you for coming on. I've got 2 things before we let you go. Word on the Street is based live and local in Atlanta. As you know, we have people listening around the country. One of my dearest friends is listening to you in Texas, and she said, I quote, "Love me some Jody Hice." So I just wanted to shout that out to you. She's listening to you in Texas. She's back and forth between Atlanta and Texas. So Carmen said, hey, what's up? And also, before we let you go, our question of the night. If you can time travel, Representative Hice, what time or era would you travel to?
You know, I'm an adventurous soul. I would love to be in the States in the early days prior to the revolution. When we're working through all this stuff, what kind of nation are we going to be? And you have the adventures of one state after another, but at the same time, the pursuit of freedom and liberty and all that sort of stuff always has intrigued me. I would love to be a part of that era in our nation's history.
And here's an opportunity for you to brown nose with us a little bit, Representative Hice.
Don't take me here. I know where you're going.
Please.
No,
so
don't take him.
if I ran for office, would you vote for me?
All right, I've got to answer that. It depends on which office you would run for.
No, it wouldn't be anything you're running for.
That's the best answer, Representative Hice.
No one's going to vote
Let
for
him
me.
go. Let him go.
No one's going
Thank
to
you,
vote.
Let him
Representative
go.
Hice.
Thank you,
Representative
Congressman.
Hice. Thank you for coming. He doesn't even like you. No. Continue to keep us informed. As always, with all of our guests, you always have a platform on Word on the Street, and thanks for breaking that down for us.
Thank you, sir.
Great to be with you. Y'all have a